So I'm John Bowrer, and I'm an MA Social Sculpture student at Oxford Brookes University, living in Oxford for this year, and having come from Brighton for the course where I was before for 30 years, so a bit of a change. Bought these shoes because I was hoping to get some shoes that would see me through working on my allotment. Yeah, I was very fond of these shoes, and they were companions in a funny sort of way. So Oxford's not home. Oxford is a place of many elements, but it's not home for me. Having spent 30 years in Brighton and really liked Brighton and been a place where I had my career as a social worker and brought up 3 sons, I'm drawn to Brighton, although I probably won't go back there after I leave Oxford. So where's home? I mean, that remains to be seen, but it's quite an unsettling thought. I don't know where home is. I had a shocking experience when I realised that the shoes had worn through, right through, and there was a hole in the sole, and I got them resoled, so they're completely new soles and heels. So I was quite shocked that actually they were almost mortal. They were failing. So I kind of restored them. And then they wore out again. They probably have been my favourite pair of shoes, possibly ever. I guess the longer you live, the more things you've got to reflect on. I think about every morning, I wonder how my life will be and whether I'm able to fulfil, if you like, my longings and values about coming from the heart, being compassionate, being creative as well, in a way that is embodying of who I truly am. Well, I find Oxford difficult. I find the extraordinary juxtaposition of absolute blinkered privilege and homelessness and deprivation and poverty. I kind of find that bizarre and offensive, and people go around gawping at beautiful buildings, and I quite like beautiful buildings. But there is a kind of Disneyland quality about Oxford that actually I find very unsettling. I guess most of my life I've been thinking about how does somebody else experience life? And how can I engage with this distressed person and facilitate some sort of bridge for them? Being alongside people, being present to people, that is a profound core value of mine. Having worked, with all sorts of people and all sorts of communities, and I've worked, on rough housing estates in coal mining villages up the side of nowhere in South Wales, and I've worked on estates in Bradford and Leeds, and I've worked on estates in Brighton, where children are 2 miles from the sea and never been to the sea. I think the gift for everybody would be a sense of belonging, that actually we feel a sense of worth, that actually we feel that we have some purpose, we are receiving nourishment and we can make a contribution, that people feel that life's worth living. The people that I work with on the estates that I talked about earlier for all sorts of reasons, they can't move freely. If you're on a housing estate in Bradford or Leeds or South Wales or even in Brighton, which is especially an affluent place, you actually can't move freely. You don't have the time, you might have the time, but actually you certainly don't have the money. You might not even have the mindset, and there's a great study of housing estates, council estates in Rotherham, and it's a classic book about how people wouldn't even think of going to London, or wouldn't even think that they could find a job in Manchester. There are certain people who are moving freely, and there is an awful lot of people that aren't moving freely. Of course, in other countries there are political and economic reasons people can't move freely, but there are certainly social and economic reasons in this country. And I think the fact that people can't move freely, it's a hidden thing. So if it's a political thing, that actually there were literal barriers at the borders that said you can't actually leave this country, it would be clearer. But actually there are hidden barriers which nobody speaks about. They're unspoken and they're much more insidious. And also that insidiousness means people blame themselves. They feel that it's their fault that they can't get their lives together. So the lack of movement for a huge amount of people in Britain is a reality, and it also is something that I think is part of the self-shaming that they carry, that they're failures. And then is it a surprise people eat junk food? Is it a surprise people take drugs? Because what else would you do? How one would get out of this invisible trap, which I think covers lots of areas, is interesting, because I don't think we have a kind of political debate about that. I don't think we have a kind of acknowledgement. This is the lived reality of many people. I think my way of life, I'm probably too questing, too wanting harmony for myself and others, and peace and goodwill, and idealistic, and which on one level has served me perhaps quite well as a social worker and nurse. On another level, I think there's a sense of naivety. So my way of life, I guess, is about coming from the heart, being soulful, being caring, compassionate, being disappointed when I find myself in circumstances that don't reciprocate, rather trample on my values. I feel quite sort of odd about the fact that I don't feel motivated around material things. That I want somewhere to live, and I want, I have a car, it's useful, but I'm not, I've never been, or status things, which has certainly been my downfall, career-wise, in terms of not pursuing status. I'm a sort of complex character, I think, multi-layered, which actually doesn't make life easy. Yeah, if you walked in my shoes, you'd see that I'm a man of integrity, which doesn't make life easy. And I guess I want the best for people, and I want the best for communities. So that's why I've worked in that area, that wanting to facilitate people, wanting to bring goodwill and energy and positive experiences and harmony to people. So I have this great urge, this great momentum, impulse to always do that. When one lives a bit longer, there's this kind of trail of events that there's like a kind of a trail of events that sort of follow you behind, and so it's like a gown of happiness and sadness and achievements and failures and scars and disappointments with my new shoes that I now wear. Yeah, I'm hoping to walk into the future that I'm less in battle mode with the world, that I'm more integrating my own sense of inner peace and still thinking about other people, still wanting the best for them, but also honouring where I've been and I'm not sure where I'm going.